Hey, hello everybody. I'm going to give people a little bit of time to join. I know some people are kind of like, "What's going on? It's alive." Um, and while they're doing that, I'll just introduce myself, and we'll continue here. Yeah, I'm Nathan. I'm the one that runs the Welpiversity. It's kind of my little pet project that I've been working on for a little while. And I'm really excited about being able to teach again because I love teaching. It's kind of it's my passion. And I'm really excited to teach Romanticism because it's also my passion. It's another kind of combination here. So I'm really happy to be able to offer this. I'm really looking forward to being able to teach this. I am putting this out as a live. So this particular one is kind of like an open house. And the reason why I've made it an open house is because I just want to open it up a little bit for this first lesson. If you like this lesson and you enjoy some of the stuff that I go into here, this is going to be an 8-part series, 8 whole parts, where we go through Romanticism and we go right all the way up to the present time right now, and we'll even look at some contemporary people who use Romanticism or romantic ideas in their music or in film, because that is super cool to be able to trace the roots back to where it all began. Yeah, the expectations are like if you're a student that registered as a student, the way to do that as a full student, where you get like course materials and everything like that, you do need to be one of our patrons, and that's the Welp Here We Are Patreon. It's only $15 a month, for Pete's sakes. Like I'm gonna charge for this course later, but for right now, if you're a patron at the $15 level or higher in our Welp Here We Are Patreon, you get all the course materials for free too. But for now, this one's for free for everybody. All right. Yeah, so follow along. Also, I was going to mention, if there are people who would like to join me live and actually go on camera, that's totally your choice. There's no requirement to do that. But I do have a little overlay here that I just made. So that's the web or the link that you'd need to use, and then you'll just join me in studio, and I won't put you on camera unless you like raise your hand or something. But you can kind of be here live in studio if you'd like. I should put the QR code there too. That would make sense, right? A little QR code as well. Okay. So yeah, if you want to join me in the studio live, if you're watching this and you're thinking, yeah, I don't mind going on camera, or I don't mind just even sitting in the studio and listening to Nathan Natteron, you can do that too. Okay. Other things to mention. Tonight's class is really, I'm really just going to get into some of the context. We are going to look at some poetry, but we aren't actually going to look at romantic poetry quite yet. Okay. Our goal of this particular module is to really just understand what Romanticism was like, the context that Romanticism came from. So we're going to look at some history, we're going to look at some poetry, but we're not going to look at romantic poetry just yet. We're really just going to look at why it came out of, and like where it came from, why it emerged. Okay. If you're a history buff, you'll really like this stuff. If you're not, that's okay too. Sometimes learning about where these things come from ignites a passion for history as well. So I invite you to kind of come at this with an open mind, and feel free to ask questions, by the way. Throw your questions in the comments, or if you're actually joining me live, you'll be able to, like, I'll see your hand raise up, and then you can join me. Okay, so I got a little slideshow. We're going to go into that right now. Let's go to this. Let me get a better view. There we go. I like that view better. Okay. So tonight, like I said, we're going to explore the world before Romanticism. We're going to talk a little bit about the Enlightenment. And you can't talk about Enlightenment without talking about Neoclassicism, which is not, they're not two separate movements per se, they're kind of connected, but that'll lead directly to what the Romantics were rebelling against. All right. So let's talk about the Enlightenment. Some of you may know stuff about this already, and if you have little comments to throw in there, you want to contribute, go ahead. I am all for it. But if you know stuff about the Enlightenment, you kind of think of things like, well, this is a picture here of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. It's kind of a big deal. In 1770, I can't remember. Is it 74 or 75? I always get the dates wrong. I'm not American. I'm Canadian. But you got the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which was really kind of a reaction to things. But the Enlightenment from the 1600s into the 1700s, and especially the late 1700s, it all kind of blends into one. Okay, so you got all this turmoil throughout the 1600s. There's lots of wars happening, lots of just like things happening that people are really not able to control, and as a way and a response to that, you get quite a bit of attempts at controlling things, right? Think the French Revolution, American Revolution, like that's the pushback to the control that was being put on them. And as those revolutions happened, and it's like kings and queens are losing their lives and the American colonies are leaving, what's going on? That turmoil of everything, right, ignited people to like try to crack down on it, of course, right? Anytime you have that kind of situation where you've got so much political turmoil, I'm not going to try to make comparisons today, but when you have those situations in history where there's a lot of flux, a lot of problems, people try to like dictate and tell you this is the way it is. Okay. Now the poets, the people who were making literature, and even the artists were big on trying to like make sure we emphasize things like logic and science and order. And when we look at poetry specifically, there's a really interesting pattern in the neoclassicals, okay? Because they're kind of a response to the Enlightenment, and it's goes right hand in hand with all these attempts to kind of quell all these rebellions. Okay, the neoclassicals, they love the Greeks because they think, oh, the Greeks and the Romans, man, they were able to keep it all together and keep that empire going, right? So they look back in history and they look back at the old forms and they're like, nope, that's the way it's done. Okay. So everything, it has to be balanced, right? When we're talking about things, everything, we got to restrain ourselves. We don't give in to our passions. When you look at the poetry, it's filled with witty puns, and they're not even funny, by the way. Like the puns in neoclassical poetry, they're dad jokes like on steroids, but the real part is that it's all this attempt to sound really, I know what I'm talking about. So the poetry, and we're going to look at some of it in a second here, but it's very pretentious, but at the same time, it's intended to, well, the term that they use, they loved this term, was et dulce et utile. And of course, they love to baffle you with Latin all the time. And that just means to, et dulce, to delight, et utile, to instruct. Okay. Poetry, literature, art, it had to both teach you a lesson and be mildly exciting, right? But if it didn't teach a lesson, throw it out. It wasn't any good, right? Again, the reinforcing this, we got to teach lessons. We got to help people learn and do what we tell them. All right. So the other thing that was really big was symmetry. The neoclassicals loved symmetry, that things had to be perfect. When you look at the form, and we're going to look at some in a second here, you'll see that it's very, very structured. All right, so I'm going to show you the first one. This is by a man named Samuel Johnson, very well-known neoclassical poet. Let's just look at the title here, right? Ready? And this is from, by the way, the poem is enormous. From the vanity of human wishes. Doesn't that title just get you all excited? Okay, the 10th satire of Juvenal, imitated. Thanks for that little clarification title. All right, here we go. Let observation with extensive view survey mankind from China to Peru. Remark each anxious toil, each eager strife, and watch the busy scenes of crowded life. Then say how hope and fear, desire and hate, o'erspread with snares the clouded maze of fate, where wavering man, betrayed by venturous pride, to tread the dreary paths without a guide, as treacherous phantoms in the mist delude, shuns fancied ills or chases airy good. All right, I'm not going to do the whole thing. I hope you can hear something. If you're listening along and you're noticing something about the style or the structure, post it in the comments. I'm really curious. Before I tell you, I want to see what you're picking up on in the language, the structure, the cadence is another good word, like the beat. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? Okay, you may need to read it one more time on your own if you want. Have a quick look. I'll read it out loud one more time, and I'll see if you can hear it. Actually, I'm going to do something different. I'll read it a different way than I did the first time. Ready? Here goes. Let observation with extensive view survey mankind from China to Peru. Remark each anxious toil, each eager strife, and watch the busy scenes of crowded life. Then say how hope and fear, desire and hate, o'erspread with snares the clouded maze of fate. Can you hear it yet? Okay, Emily, good one. So yeah, lots of rhyming. That was a big deal to the neoclassicals. It had to rhyme. Every line, it's got to rhyme, right? It was like a rule. You can't break that rule. Poetry has to rhyme to the neoclassicals. That was a big and really important rule. What else do you hear? What else do you see? Anything? I was kind of giving it away in the way that I was. Hey, this is a fancy term. It's got a beat. You bet it's got a beat. The fancy term for this, and some of you probably heard this if you were paying attention, and it's okay if you weren't in high school or junior high, is iambic pentameter. By the way, it's from the neoclassicals. Well, the neoclassicals and then later the modernists in the early 1900s that we get these terms from. But it's called iambic pentameter. And the reason why it's an iambic pentameter, because it goes da-da, 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 and there's 8 pentameter. So there's 8 da-dats, right? Let observation with extensive view. Da-da, 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 da-da. Wait a second, pentameter. I've got that wrong. It's 5, not 8. Pentameter, 5 meters. Let observation with extensive view. Why did I get 8? Why am I thinking 8? Anyway, I don't know where that came from. Survey mankind from China to Peru, right? It's going to be iambic pentameter all the time. Okay, but this is a classical thing. This is like the Romans and the Greeks. They loved this thing. It was just like they made this idea up that it all had to be like this. By the way, Shakespeare, most of Shakespeare, well, not all of it. Whenever the royalty speaks, they always speak in iambic pentameter, right? The king's preferred speech. And whenever the peasants speak, it's almost never rhymed or has any meter, because peasants, they don't need to speak like that. Anyway, that's a side note. All right, so that's Samuel Johnson. We're not going to go super deep into him. We are going to look at a very pretentious man by the name of Alexander Pope. Okay. Yes, heroic couplets. He's very well known for this. And oh man, he was really well known for making sure that you were a master of, it's not poetry unless it's absolutely perfect, right? Okay. And then of course, this is the big one, the idea that emotion was pointless. You restrain the emotion. It might kind of creep in every now and again, but you cut it off really fast. You make sure that emotion doesn't come out in your poetry too much, because we got to restrain ourselves. We got to make sure that emotional stuff doesn't make it to the page, because we got to keep this in line, right? Everything has to be in line. Alexander Pope and other neoclassicals always, not that they always did this, but there was often a satire about the really high society, right? Like Alexander Pope wasn't like the top of the chain here. It's kind of a little bit lower, and they would often satirize, kings and queens, because they were okay to satirize. And of course, you could make fun of the poor people too all the time. You always have been, but the top, they always got they were targets. Okay. Okay, so you'll hear it in a second. I'm going to do this again, but with Alexander Pope, and I want you to really listen to again that iambic pentameter, the language and the style of language. Okay, the real thing here, I want you to really think of, who is this for? Like, what's the point of this literature or this poetry? Okay, get ready. I'm going to read another one here. So this is Alexander Pope from his riveting poem, An Essay on Criticism, part one of 3. Yeah, 3 parts. This is just a part of part 1. Okay, now, you want to write poetry for people to read. What better way to do that than to start in Latin? Sounds good. I don't know my Latin very well, so when I read this, I'm probably butchering it. Sicid novisti rectius istus candidus imperfecti, si non his utere mecum. And then there's the translation. If you have come to know any precept more correct than these, share it with me, brilliant one. If not, use these with me. And then got a quote, where you got it from, like directly from Horace. Again, he's an old classical Greek, Roman. All right, part 1. Here we go, part 1. 'Tis hard to say if greater want of skill appear in writing or in judging ill, but of these 2, less dangerous is the fence to tire our patience than mislead our sense. Some few in that, but numbers err in this. 10 censure wrong for one who writes amiss. A fool might once himself alone expose. Now one in verse makes many more in prose. It's dripping with pretentiousness. Okay. But I want to, anything else? Does anyone else notice anything beyond just simply that iambic pentameter and the rhyming? What do you notice about the tone? About, well, here's the big question: who's this for? Yeah, who's the audience for this? Can anyone make a guess? I'd really love to hear what people have to say. Okay, I'm going to wait a little bit, but I'm curious to know, who do you think is the audience for this kind of stuff? When I read this other part here, you might get it in a second round. You might hear it. Okay. Again, an essay on criticism. Whew. Boy, that's a page turner. 'Tis hard to say if greater want of skill appear in writing or in judging ill. But of these 2, less dangerous is the offense to tire our patience than mislead our sense. Some few in that, but numbers err in this. 10 censure wrong for one who writes amiss. 10 censure, like it's like a slap. 10 lashings for one who writes amiss, like you get it wrong. A fool might once himself alone expose. Now one in verse makes many more in prose. Okay. Fools expose themselves by writing and making mistakes. But like you that's just, you're not allowed to make mistakes. It's extremely rigid, right? And the big thing here, look at how good I can write. Okay. It's showing off on like an exponential level here. It has nothing to do with like, how do I feel? It has everything to do with, look at me, I'm a good writer, right? That's the point of the neoclassicals. Okay. I mean, you can try to like, I, I, I don't hear anything in there about him. No, there's no mention of me or I or any of that stuff. And it's all these big ideas. Okay. All right. So here's some of the big ideas that the soon to come romantics start picking up on. Because emotion was just not part of the picture, all right, because it was just entirely not even mentioned, and whenever it did come up, it was such a struggle. People needed an outlet to do this. And by the way, like one of the biggest motivators of change really was the fact that here's all these people who have now declared their freedom in the United States, and the United States has its own romanticism. In England, right, there's lots of pressure to get rid of the king, and they end up coming up with a constitutional monarchy over time. The French just killed all their kings off with their heads. There's all this new ideas of like, hey, we have power. Like human beings we're not supposed to live in this like, king, queen, and now it's just, us as underlings. We now have power that we can do something with. And how do we express our emotion now that we're less controlled and less told what to do? Because that idea of individuality is now, like, especially with the changes politically, this old classical form is like garbage. How do you express yourself in iambic pentameter when you really have these overwhelming emotions? How do you get that out? You can't. Okay. And we'll see if I have time in the next module to look at some attempts to try and get it out. It's sad and a little bit depressing to read how people attempted to get around this at first. And then this last point here, that beauty is you can like create beauty if you structure it and define it and give it a title or a name. But you don't put emotion in with beauty. When you're trying to explain and understand something that's beautiful, it just is. It just is, right? According to the neoclassicals, it just is beautiful. There's no other explanation other than it just is. It is because it has this shape and it was carved by so and so, and it is this expensive. It just is beautiful, without any attempt at trying to explain why or how it makes you feel or anything related to feelings or emotions whatsoever. Okay. I got well, before we get to the transition poets. Oh, in the course package. So for those who signed up for this course and have the course package, there is another example from, I believe it's, who was that? Oh, it's Pope. Yeah. Called A Rape of the Lock. Very famous poem. Where Pope is trying to describe this very like horrific defeat on a battlefield. And he just, it's like the Rape of the Lock sounds like, oh, what is this? This sounds very tragic. It's so hard to read. It's too much. It's way over explained. It's why I think many people hate literature, because they might have been shoved this in their face at one point and said, this is high society, this is good stuff. And they start to read it and they just felt like, I'm not getting anything out of this, right? I mean, yeah, for quite a while, even after the neoclassics kind of faded away, people kept going back to them, going like, "Oh, we should get back in line, like Pope always told us to do." Okay, and it didn't quite ever resonate. There are people today, by the way, who still love just the neoclassicals, still use them as examples of the best poetry ever written. Okay, they're not in the majority, by the way. People who love neoclassical poetry, um, well, I should differentiate. There's people who love neoclassical poetry because of they love the sound of it and then how it, and that's different than going, this is the best poetry ever, right? Those are two different things. Because when you say it out loud, it actually is quite beautiful, but I'm not like posting it on my wall or writing songs about it or using it as a way to help me process complex feelings. Not at all. Right? There's zero vulnerability in it. No one ever gets vulnerable in neoclassical poetry. It's all about, look at me, like, look how great I sound. Okay. All right. So just to quickly recap before I go into the next part of this, it was about keeping order, applying to reason, right? That things all have a logical sequence. The technique had to be perfect. It was that things are universal truths that we have to like hold up and really show to people. I mean, you can make great arguments that we're kind of in a bit of a cycle like that, in a way now, where we're trying to figure out, post internet boom, what do we do with this explosion of information? There's lots of people trying to like keep it from, disrupting society. So you can see why there's these kind of ebbs and flows in over time. But that it doesn't work to process feelings, right? Yeah, that's a great line. Thank you, Emily. I'm going to put that on. Claiming neoclassical poetry is the best sounds inherently neoclassical. Very well said. Yep, exactly. All right. Well, this is going to set the stage now for some of the transition poets. Okay. So we're going to do this a little bit more next week, where we're going to look at these guys, William Blake, Robert Burns, and I think there'll be some time to tap into some of the mad poets. Okay. Both Blake and Burns, they made it through the transition period fine. Okay. I mean, to this day, Robert Burns is hailed as Scotland's greatest poet. All right. Because some of his stuff is quite funny, but also quite Scottish, right? It really appeals to, if you're a Scot, then you're going to love Robert Burns, because he wrote stuff in the 1700s that they're still quoting today and still using. It resonated with people, with their personalities. Blake is also a very visionary poet, but he wrote long before the Romantics take center stage, and he was really pushing back against all of this like control stuff that was trying to have, and he was really critiquing it and pointing things out, putting out the problems with it. Very, very wonderful poet. We're going to look a little bit closer at their poetry next week. But the one that I have a real soft spot for these next ones. But I can't really, I can go into a little bit with these guys, but I don't want to take up too much time next week. Thomas Gray, Thomas Chatterton, and William Cooper. Chatterton and Cooper both, I think Chatterton, I don't know if I don't want to make YouTube shut me down, but he didn't make it past, I think, 17 or something. Like, he was quite young when he, took the highway out. Cooper also, like, extremely depressed, wrote some of the saddest poetry and songs I think you'll ever read, because they were struggling with powerful emotions, and the only outlet they had for it was this rigid, structured neoclassical style. And they tried so hard to express themselves in that style. And I mean, people are divided as to whether they did or didn't. my opinion, I think they actually do quite a good job, but they don't quite tap into what will later be called Romanticism. They try desperately to, but they don't quite get those emotions through. They really struggle. Okay, so we'll look at a couple of their poems. That'll happen next week. But you can kind of see like where this is headed, right? Everybody is, or sorry, the people who are at the top here, these pretentious poets. By the way, Pope was poet laureate of Britain, of course, and so he loved to call people out. All right, next week. So module 1.5, it's Blake Burns and the Unraveling of Reason. That's the title for it. And then I said we'd touch on the mad poets. Okay, well, that's the short and sweet lesson. Again, that one is free. So I'll leave this up on the Welpiversity YouTube page as the free lesson for this. If you like this lesson, yay! That means maybe you might join us on our Patreon page on Welp Here We Are. If you go to Patreon Welp Here We Are, that'll actually, I even have the QR code. Look at that. Hang on a second. It is right here. Okay, I'm switching it out from the other one. So that's the Welp, the Patreon code. Nobody joined me live in the studio, and that's okay. Yeah, if you want to go to the Welp Patreon, you do need to join at the VIP tier in order to have access to these courses, but that's where it's going to happen. I do want to close with this. If anyone has any questions or anything that they would like to, add at the end here, this is a great time to say it. Next week, it'll be same time. So my time is 6 o'clock, or this started at 6 o'clock, whatever it is, wherever you're from and wherever you're watching this from. That's when the live class will drop. It won't be free going forward. It will be only featured through Patreon. But you're welcome to join. I'd love to have you there. We got some really good stuff coming. The Blake and the Mad Poet stuff is fascinating. But wait till we get to Wordsworth, one of my favorite poets of all time, Coleridge, Keats, and then of course we'll go even further into some of the more contemporary poets. It's gonna be so good. So thank you for joining me. Again, if there's any questions, go ahead and ask them now. Great chance to get your question in before I sign off. Emily, 2:30 a.m. your time. I guess this is going around the world. I appreciate the fact that you came to this at 2:30 a.m. Emily gets a round of applause. Any other questions before I sign off here? Good. You don't have to work on Friday. That's good. Okay. I just want to mention this for the class participants. If you are at that $15 tier or higher, you will get it's probably going to drop. I'll make it drop sooner. It was supposed to drop at 7:10, but there's like a course. What am I trying to say? Like a course summary, but a more detailed version of what I said. And if I missed anything, it's in there. And then, of course, there's the course package that you guys have that I put in Patreon. So you're welcome to peruse that. And then, I look forward to next week. If there's no other questions, then I'm going to sign off. Thanks, everybody. It was a lot of fun. I'll see you next week.